Is that because they're not dealing with US immigration, or why are they so optimistic about it?
Yeah, that's 15%. So, that's a very interesting question. Is it because we are too numb to anything that happens, or is it we don't deal with the US at all? Yeah. Anybody wants to volunteer an answer there? Oh, never mind. We'll get back to that. But that's an interesting. Yeah, sorry, there's
I
one.
think somebody wanted to give a response. Aruna.
Any further, we are still open for it. So the business cannot bring down from what today we are 60% operating just because the new guys come on board. So you'll have to find an alternative ways, like you experts have been giving. Could be there is a B way or a C way onto it. But the fact is that we will have to accept it, get prepared for the worst, and keep going on. It's not that you're going to call back all your US guys and move your house to Europe. No, it's not going to happen. It's no easy. Because for ages, we are so used to 60 to 70% of the US revenue. So the fact remains same, like the way we accepted 500 and 1,000 rupees notes overnight, so we will accept these too.
So grin, bear, and adapt would be the answer there.
Absolutely.
You're very fatalistic, Aruna. But,
So that's very interesting. So with all the gloomy conversations around, gloomy narrative around with President-elect being there, are there any bright spots with Trump's election? Any bright spots? Any at all? I can see Rami is scared.
well, we'll have Melania Trump in the White House. Yeah.
From a immigration policy perspective or the practices here, anything else which we can look for?
I think there is actually, and I always like to to borrow from a Beatles song, take a sad song and make it better. If there is going to be a severe crackdown and increased compliance, etc., for companies that have been doing things well and have had a very strong compliance and have a good reputation and are reinvesting in their communities, I think they can really benefit actually.
Sure.
But the companies that aren't may not be able to do business or are going to be really hurt by doing business. So, so it's not something that anyone can ignore. It's something that people have to really take very seriously and just change the mentality. It's here, it's coming. It's really just an issue of how severe is it going to be, and it's very critical to make sure that you're not that company that makes that mistake.
I have one thought, Praveen, which is something that India can try to do.
Mm-hmm.
India is one of the few countries which is such a strong trading partner with the US, and yet we do not have an e-visa treaty.
Yeah.
You know, countries like Pakistan have it, which means that even if you don't have an H, the E might allow you to use and to allow for transfer of people and movement of people and goods and services.
Sure.
And I have no idea why India doesn't. I believe Prime Minister Modi has a good relationship or a very promising relationship with President-elect Trump. Maybe that's something that they can both try to get to.
We will save that one up for Gagan.
Well, there are enough of you over
That's
here.
an excellent point, Rohit.
Yeah, there are enough of you over here who can try and influence that and see if it
Absolutely.
can go in that direction.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just to add to what Rohit was saying, from the trend which we saw, I could see that extremely it's got to 34%. So from my experience, I would say change of guard in host country definitely affects the adjudication. No, that is not the case. What actually happens is that the consular officers, the legislation remains the same. So you might have thoughts that there could be B1 denials increasing. So just to let everybody in the hall know that it doesn't affect at all, and most probably what affects is the bilateral relationship between the two countries. If they are on a high, then obviously the denial rate is down. But from my experience, I've seen that the better the relationship is between two home and host country, obviously the denial rate goes up. But change of guard having any effect on the adjudication, either of the visas, V1, L1, H1s, it is not affected at all.
Okay. And I know there's enough said, but I think because this topic is so important, I'll put one more question to this. What's your sense of how much of the rhetoric which was in the campaign, how much of that will actually be implemented? Do we expect a lot of it, some of it, or we expect Trump to be a changed man and White House will have that effect on him? How much of what he said is likely to happen from your feeling? Quick opinion from all of you, quick check. 50%, almost all?
I'll give you my
lesser?
thought. I'll
Yeah.
give you my thought on it. This morning, he's back to tweeting.
Okay.
So maybe that gives you an answer of how much he's going to change.
But
He's
is it at
tweeted-
3 a.m. is the question?
Well, it wasn't, but he tweeted this time on the protests against his victory.
Yeah.
And that was this morning. So I don't know about the change.
Okay, so you're saying a good chance he'll do what he said
He's
he would
going
do.
to try. I think he's got the majority. He's got the House. He's got the Senate. There's no reason why he shouldn't bulldoze and get his entire agenda done. He's got elected without the support of anybody.
True.
I think he's done a darn good job of getting to that point. So I don't see why he shouldn't try to get the rest of his agenda done.
And adding
Yep,
to Rohit's
sure.
point, a lot of the folks that the study I just read were early supporters and very loyal supporters of his from the very beginning. So he's going to either upset those folks or he's going to upset the establishment. And so far, he's had a pretty good record of upsetting the
Upsetting the
establishment.
establishment, yes.
So,
Rajesh, your quick thoughts?
I think my take is primarily he's going to, the first thing he's going to do is on cut down on the illegal immigration. Probably once he
point.
kind of reaches that point, then probably he's going to come at the legal
Business
way,
immigration.
business immigration. And with respect to business immigration, I think he's probably going to start with increasing the fee, because that way he's going to cut down on the smaller organizations which primarily are non-compliant, or maybe a bit non-compliant. So I think that's some of the key things that he's going to start with. Not really on a major change per se, at least for the first year or two, but primarily the smaller scale.
you know, the problem is, and I can see your point on that, but I think it might be the opposite, because putting in some strong employment-based compliance issues is something they can do very quickly, and it won't take a lot to implement. Where the illegal immigration thing, it's a big problem. 11 million people, resources, you know, et cetera. They don't have jails to hold all these people. So, you know, I think, you know, he could actually go and do the opposite of what you just said. Well, who knows? I'm not really sure, because it's a lot less costly, and it's something you can implement quickly, and then you can show the public, look what I've started doing, and I'm going to get to the other problem, which is a bigger problem. I need a little bit more time, but I'm going to address that as well.
Yeah, valid point. I mean, I agree. So I was referring to more from a policy standpoint or some minor contours, not just building the wall between US and Mexico. I'm sure that's definitely going to
Right.
take more time.
But I think even just, I think there'll be some heightened detention, deportation.
Yeah.
Correct.
But again, you know, they need to hire many more people. They need facilities that you know, you don't have the infrastructure that's turnkey for that right now. That's going to take some time. And if you want to do that too, he's going to have to go back to Congress and ask for more money, which is going to slow down the process.
Yeah.
And you know, where a lot of the things that I had mentioned, he can literally just
Do it overnight,
just
yeah.
sign off on it, and it's done.
But directionally, increased checks at the borders is a given. Sanjeev, you would agree?
Yeah, I think the two most important agenda items he had was improve the economy and getting jobs for the U.S. citizens. So all his policies will be, you know, focused on, you know, how he can able to get more jobs for the citizens. But I've seen in the past, most of the U.S. elections, they have laundry list of agenda items, but when they come to implementation, I think they execute 7 or 8 out of 10. So time will tell how his you know, new policies would be affecting cross-border travel. But let's see how things shape up. But I would say that yes, he will definitely make efforts to increase the job for U.S. citizens in the U.S. And secondly, I also heard that he's going to make some wall between US and Mexico so that people don't travel. But from my experience, I would say that there are certain jobs where you know, you need certain kind of people who would be doing that job. So I really don't foresee that could be executed 100%, but obviously yes, 60 to 70%, he would definitely put a hold on cross-border you know, people traveling. Legitimately, yes, but illegally, he would definitely give a stop on it.
Sure. Thank you. I know this is a topic we could speak all day, but we are running out of time. So we'll quickly jump to a couple of other things. There are other extraneous factors driving immigration policy. We see in Europe a lot of impact coming from the refugee crisis, the security threats across Europe. What's your feel? Rohit, you want to take a shot of it? What's happening? Do we expect change in policy direction? 5 other key countries in Europe are going for some sort of polls in the next year. So do we see cascading effect of what's happening in US and UK, or
Yeah,
how's
I
it?
think, like you've said, I mean, especially in the interest of time, it's what you highlighted is really important. Clearly, the refugee crisis. I think what Trump has missed and he kept talking about refugees wanting to be admitted, being admitted in different countries. I think he's missed the point that as immigration lawyers, we see that clearly they are one group of people that is vetted the most before they're actually admitted. So that was an allegation which certainly hit a nerve, but I think it was factually unfounded. So the refugee crisis clearly is one that cannot be belittled in any way, but it's certainly important. Security threats in Europe, I think whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the US, is clearly going to be an impetus for vetting people in a more careful manner and for making sure that they're not violating their immigration status. And if they are, there are some serious, severe penalties for that. But the way I look at it in one word, all these changes, you see that whether it's the UK, well, Brexit happened because of that, immigration crisis, security threats as well. There are some countries that are trying to loosen up some rules and regulations, but at the end of the day, they do want to look after their own, and I think that's only fair. I don't think there's an issue. And if I had one takeaway word from this entire presentation, according to me, it's compliance, compliance, compliance.
Sure, that's key. We'll quickly jump to the next topic. We see trends of protectionism across the board. We're seeing the protectionism coming through in different flavors. We see that coming through as looking for protection of local jobs, higher wages as an entry barrier. We see that now coming in as quotas, enhanced thresholds for skills, etc. Is there, and across a spectrum of countries, it's not just limited to one or two countries, and we see this happening across the board. Is this the new way of making immigration more difficult? Is this a trend we're likely to see much more in the future? What are your thoughts? I mean, Rajesh, you want to take the first shot at it?
So obviously, I think the whole refugee crisis in Europe has really impacted the immigration, whether it's the employment immigration or even the regular immigration. So we have seen increased protectionism by major countries. I mean, Sweden, for example, which had a much more smoother, faster process, now it's taking months together. It's primarily because the Immigration and Labor Department is kind of completely bogged down with the volume of refugees. So they're trying to kind of ensure they have certain protocols and processes put in place to kind of manage the refugee crisis, and then the priority is given to the corporate, business side. I think that's kind of spreading across most of the other European regions as well. It's going to continue for a couple of more, that's what we perceive. Unless until that's kind of, the government takes a stand in terms of what needs to be done with these refugees on a long term, or probably give them an asylum status, I think it's really going to continue the status quo. We don't see any immediate solution as such. Probably we'll have to deal with that delays.
Sanjeev, Rohit, quick thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I'll just quickly go back to one of the points which we were discussing is security threat. In the past, I've seen that cases have been held with the U.S. consulate, and the only statement which you guys get is administrative processing. So just to, because it's a security issue, so I can't disclose much, but just to let you guys know that once you get this information from the consulate that it is under administrative processing, which means that it wouldn't be possible that the person has done something, but if the name and certain things that match with a person who is already there in the system, in their system, so they definitely have to cross-verify from all aspects 360 degree that this is not the same person. So what they do is they take your 10 fingerprints and then cross-verify across the departments which they have, and then once they get the clearance, they can able to proceed further accordingly, either the person is the same. So a small case, even if somebody by name Sanjeev Sharma and his year of birth matches, and he has just done shoplifting in US when he was there, so they have to ensure that this is not the same Sanjeev Sharma who has done this kind of activity. So just to guys let you know that administrative processing is nothing to be feared of. It is just a cross verification that unfortunately that person or your applicant has matched, certain things have matched with that particular person in the system, and hence they just have to verify that this is not the same person.
Sure. Thanks, Sanjeev. Ram, you add a quick point on that?
Yes, I think it's a much more complicated, bigger issue, and immigration's one component of it. And I think it all starts with the fact that there has been very little global growth. Economies are not growing at a percentage they should be growing, especially in the developed countries. Many of the developed countries are running deficits. Therefore, they don't have the social safety net and education funds, if you will, to take care of their population. And I think many in the West look to a lot of the, the former Tigers or BRICS, and they say, wow, these folks are still doing 6-7% growth, and they're complaining about that. We're barely doing 1%, and we can't take care of our population, and we're running deficits, and we have all these foreigners coming here taking all the good jobs that many of us are not qualified for. And so it's not just an American thing. Minus Canada, which we talked about, is becoming more liberal. Sure. I mean, if you look at Brexit, and who knows what's going to happen next year in France with Le Pen? I mean, don't be surprised if that one goes. And then, of course, in the Scandinavian countries, in Denmark. So you're seeing this very anti-immigrant populist mood throughout Europe and many of the developed countries. But there's also, too, a lot of the trade deals. It's not just the movement of people, it's the movement of goods. Where people or in companies and governments are trying to encourage buy American or buy Michigan or buy Canadian. Our products are made here. Sure. So there's that whole new sort of aspect of, maybe as a population, I don't mind paying more for my car, or I don't mind paying more for my suit if it's made here and people in my country are benefiting from it. True. Yeah. Because I can purchase something that's less expensive, made somewhere else, but at the end of the day, if that's going to put my fellow citizens out of work, do I want to do that anymore? And I think a lot of governments are examining that and saying, okay, trade deals are great, but there's a major
35% tax of Trump speaks about might be a reality. So we'll quickly take one other poll before we get into audience questions. I've been timed out twice, but I'm choosing to ignore that. What do immigration practitioners feel about the way things are going? I mean, is there any cause for optimism, depression? It's just the same. We'll take a quick poll about that, and then we'll get to questions. What is the feel of immigration practitioners? How do they feel things will go from here? Just okay. So this is fairly clear and unanimous. So. I'd like to see that 5% believe it's going to be even better. That's great to see. There's some optimism for sure.
That must have been the attorneys in the audience.
Yeah, it must be the attorneys in the audience. That's true. Yeah. But yeah, 73% feel it's going to be difficult. That's a sizable chunk, and understandably so. Listening to what all's happened here, and that's a significant thing. Can we quickly look at the audience questions? A couple of questions, if there's any, and then we could get this panel to a close. Anyway. Okay, Indian PF. So the first one is Indian PF officers indicating a positive on SSA with USA. Will election results restart this dialogue? Very quickly, you may have a view on this, Rajesh.
Yeah, I think this is a very tricky question. This has been pending for a long time. I don't see any immediate positive move on this front. US has been trying to protect its social security thing, so I really don't see any positive thing happening in this. So I think even the previous government tried a lot, even Modi's period they did try, but I don't think any positive move. Maybe Gagan, when he's here, he will be able to help us out and throw more light.
Sure. I don't know. Then I'll keep the second question aside for the moment. It's specific to an L1. I think there's plenty to discuss offline for that. Will Trump reinstate BP to India and to have a tab on business travel? Sanjeev, any quick views?
No, I don't think so, because BP program had its own significance. Now the consular officers, especially one of the officers who recognized that BEP has no more significance, and then BEP program was being stopped. So near future, I asked him that, do you anticipate that it might be revived? But he said that no, he doesn't foresee that in the next 4 or 5 years BEP program might come into picture again, but you never know. If there is a demand, definitely consulate will think of it. But to answer your question, no, another 4 or 5 years, there's no BEP program as far as my knowledge goes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being a patient audience, and thank you, panelists, for such insightful views on this. I know, apologies, we've exceeded the time slot by a bit, but I thought this was important to speak about. Thank you again.
Thank you.